In 1922, a man named Lewis Fry Richardson tried to forecast the weather by hand. It took him weeks of pen and paper arithmetic to compute 6 hours of atmospheric motion. And his answer was wrong. 100 years later, the same equations are being solved on machines that compute a billion floating point operations every second. This is the history of computational fluid dynamics, from a single mathematician with a pencil to Exascale supercomputers and AI weather models. We'll cover the people, the algorithms, and the hardware that build the field you and I work in today. Our story begins in 1922. Lewis Fry Richardson, a British mathematician and Quaker, publishes a book called Weather Prediction by Numerical Process. He proposes something radical for the time, that you could forecast the weather by writing the atmospheric equations of motion as finite differences and integrating them forward in time, step by step. He even imagines what he calls a forecast factory, a giant hall of 64,000 human computers, all calculating in parallel, conducted by a man on a podium. Is the first description of a parallel computing architecture in history, decades before any electronic computer existed. The idea is right. The execution is impossible without a machine, but the dream is set. The next big leap comes in 1928. Three German mathematicians, Courant, Friedrichs, and Louis, publish a paper that introduces what we now call the CFL condition. It's the rule that says your time step has to be small enough that information cannot travel further than one cell in one step. Every explicit CFD scheme ever written, from 1928 to today, lives or dies by it. Through the 1930s and 40s, John von Neumann develops the broader theory of how to solve partial differential equations on machines that did not yet exist. The theory is built first. The hardware will catch up. April 1950. The ENIAC, Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer, runs the first numerical weather forecast in history. The team is led by Jules Charny from MIT, Norwegian meteorologist Ragnar Fjørtoft, and John von Neumann himself. They simplify the atmospheric equations down to a single equation called the barotropic vorticity equation, just to fit the calculation on the machine. The forecast covers North America. It takes about 24 hours of wall clock computer time to predict the next 24 hours of weather, including several breakdowns. Just in time computing, but it works. 5 years later, in 1955, the United States starts running operational numerical weather forecasts every day. CFD has become a real tool. Through the 1960s, the field grows up. Francis Harlow's group at Los Alamos invents the marker and cell method in 1965, the first practical way to compute incompressible Navier-Stokes on a staggered grid, and the foundation of modern multi-phase CFD. 4 years later, in 1969, Robert McCormack at NASA Ames publishes his predictor corrector scheme, still in the back of every compressible solver textbook today. By the end of the decade, CFD has its own conferences, its own journals, and its own identity as a recognized discipline. It's no longer applied mathematics, it's CFD. 1972 is one of the most important years in CFD history. Two huge things happen. First, the finite volume method becomes mainstream. It's the discretization that respects conservation by integrating the equations over each control volume. Almost every commercial CFD code today is built on it. Second, Suhas Patankar and Brian Spalding at Imperial College in London published the simple algorithm, a procedure for coupling pressure and velocity in incompressible flow. Simple and its descendants, Simplec, Peso, Pimple, are the workhorses of essentially every modern CFD solver. If you've run a steady state simulation, you've used the 1972 algorithm. The 1980s is when CFD escapes the lab and enters industry. Sham, Spalding's company, launches PHOENICS in 1981, the first commercial general purpose CFD code. Fluent emerges from Sheffield with the first graphical user interface. You no longer need a punch card to run a simulation. Star CD, founded by David Gossman in 1987. FIDAP, Flow3D, CFX. They all appear within the same decade. The hardware is the Cray XMP and Cray 2 supercomputers. with peak performance around 1 gigaflop. Only national labs and major aerospace companies can afford them. CFD is becoming a profession. Then the personal computer happens. Through the 1990s and 2000s, CFD comes off the supercomputer and onto the workstation. Beowulf-style Linux clusters running MPI replace single-node supercomputers in most engineering departments. ANSYS starts buying up the commercial codes, CFX in 2003, Fluent in 2006. And then in December 2004, Henry Wheeler and his team at OpenCFD release a code originally written at Imperial College in the late 1980s under the GPL open source license. They call it OpenFOAM. For the first time in history, anybody with a laptop and patience can run an industrial grade CFD code for free. The barrier to entry collapses. The 2010s rewrite the economics again. GPUs change everything. ANSYS Fluent integrates the NVIDIA AMGX solver around 2014 to run the pressure equation on graphics cards. By 2023, Fluent ships the first fully GPU-resident multi-GPU finite volume solver. And then in May 2022, the Frontier supercomputer at Oak Ridge becomes the world's first exascale machine, sustaining 1.1 exaflops on the LinPack benchmark. That's a billion times faster than the Cray XMP that scientists fought over in the 1980s. A reference CFD case at Frontier reportedly cuts a 38.5-hour CPU run down to 1.5 hours on 1024 GPUs. The same Navier-Stokes equations Richardson wrote down in 1922 now run 100 trillion times faster. And here's where the story comes full circle. In 2023, DeepMind releases GraphCast, a machine learning model that beats the European Centre's operational weather forecast on most metrics in under a minute on a single TPU. The same problem Richardson tried to solve by hand in 1922, now solved by a neural network in under 60 seconds. In 2025, Luminary Cloud, Honda, and NVIDIA released the Shift SUV Physics AI Foundation model, real-time aerodynamic feedback for car designers, on the desktop. We're not replacing CFD. We're augmenting 100 years of accumulated method with new compute. The history of CFD isn't finished. You're living the next chapter. So why does any of this matter for an engineer running CFD today? Three things. One, every algorithm in your solver has a date and a paper. Simple is from 1972. The CFL number from 1928. Knowing the lineage helps you read your textbook. 2. The speed problem of 1922 is still the speed problem of 2026. Richardson took weeks to do 6 hours of forecast. We wait a day for a 3D simulation. The number shifted by 12 orders of magnitude. But the tension is the same. 3. The field absorbs new hardware faster than new physics. From punch cards to GPUs, the equations barely changed. The way we solve them is reinvented every decade. From a man with a pencil in 1922 to a neural network on a GPU in 2026. The Navier-Stokes equations have not changed. The way we solve them is reinvented in every generation. And every CFD engineer working today is standing on 100 years of work, built by Richardson, Charney, Harlow, Patankar, Spalding, and 1,000 others. Use it well. Thanks for watching CFD Toolbox. If you want more CFD content, hit subscribe and check out my other videos on the channel.